Okay, well here's the claim then. He is saying than vegans, assuming this is what he means by plant fetishists. They find themselves, they being vegans, in the uncomfortable position of having to hear meat eaters claim that their food habits are... Well, look, we've always had to hear meat eaters claim that. Meat eaters have always lied about this stuff. There's nothing here, zero whatsoever, in this article that you've written to suggest that meat-eating diets are less cruel or more environmentally protective than vegan diets. And in fact, they're not. Well, you're not going to believe this, but we've got more anti-vegan nonsense in the Telegraph. I know, I'm as shocked as you are. From William Sitwell this time. Checked out his Wikipedia. William Sitwell is another graduate of Eton College. This is a great article because the guy is so smug and so wrong. So we're going to have a lot of fun here. William Sitwell. Pity the vegans when the moral high ground starts getting crowded. The plant eaters must have choked on their jackfruit to hear that meat eaters can be less cruel and more environmentally protective. Look at what the words less and more are doing here. I can hear my teachers telling me, you shouldn't put that unless you have the word than in there, right? Is William Sitwell claiming that meat eaters can be less cruel and more environmentally protective than vegans? Or is he claiming they can be less cruel and more environmentally protective than some other meat eaters? Or than they used to be as meat eaters? Is he doing a comparison to vegans? Is there any claim or any evidence whatsoever that meat eaters are less cruel and more environmentally protective than vegans? Let's take a look, maybe there is. The turnip munchers are having another bad week. Okay, I'm going to try not to read it in a silly voice because it's... Plant-based sales are dropping, brands have been withdrawing products, and Sainsbury's has just signed a 10-year deal with their main purveyor of pork that, say, the supermarket and piggy provider say set new standards in welfare, as well as giving some much-needed stability for farmers. They're talking about Sainsbury's new deal with Cranswick. Cranswick have just had a farm rejected in the UK because they were unable to provide evidence of its environmental impact. It means more space for farrowing, brackets, more room for mother sows and their little piglets. You can Google farrowing, see what that looks like. So these are some of the practices that William Sitwell's happy that we're going to be seeing more of. This Eton graduate celebrating more of this in the Telegraph. Thanks, Mr. Sitwell. That's great. 24/7 monitoring by new AI tools and general improvements in welfare. He's really been quite vague in the alleged welfare improvements here. I can tell this is the paragraph where he wanted to give a big list of all of the great things about welfare in this new pork deal. All he's managed is more space for farrowing. And then he's just said 27 monitoring doesn't necessarily mean anything about welfare. And general improvements in welfare. Brilliant. It puts vegans in the same awkward position that Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch keeps finding herself in, having her territory occupied by Labour, as Mrs Badenoch must applaud Sir Keir Starmer's plans to cut benefits, slash the number of civil servants and banish quangos, so vegans must surely herald a supermarket's aim to improve animal welfare. It's nice that this Eton graduate has a platform to not only publish slop about veganism, but also to applaud policies which are going to hurt the poorest members of our society. That's awesome. For the vegan's happy place when not chomping on jackfruit and slurping nut cream is in being horrified by conventional farming. This is the stupidest sentence I've ever read. I don't think vegans are happy to be horrified. They do experience horror when they think about what happens on farms, which apparently this guy doesn't think about. Nothing gets the plant eater up in the morning quicker than the dangled prospect of a nice juicy photo of the horror of animal farming, or better still, fresh video footage of the gory details of enclosures and slaughter. Again, I don't know why he would think that any vegans are actually happy to be looking at this stuff. If you ask vegans whether they want to look at slaughterhouse and gory footage, I would bet most of them are going to say no, they don't want to. They do probably think it's important for meat eaters to look at that, because they are actually responsible for making it happen. They can then properly rent their hemp shirts, paint new slogans on placards, and gear up for a nice demo or some fun milk spilling in Waitrose. This guy's literally crying over spilt milk. This idea that vegans are really pleased that this horrific stuff's happening so that now we can protest about it. Do you think that vegans want this stuff to stop happening? Or do you think that vegans want it to keep on happening so that we can keep on protesting about it? It's possible that you do think it's the latter. In which case, that would obviously be dumb, right? Imagine you have a group of people who just love protesting and they think, well, I hope the thing I'm protesting against doesn't ever end because I love protesting so much. That is this guy's mental model of vegans. Some people really are convinced that the only reason that vegans care about any of this stuff is getting a personal sense of moral superiority. And you can see it in what this guy's writing. On a clear day with a good pair of binoculars, you can see them up there on the moral high ground, chuntering about climate change and cruelty. This type of objection is a classic example of what's called do-gooder derogation, right? This guy just cannot accept the idea that somebody might sincerely be concerned about animal welfare. His mental model of a vegan is just somebody who's concerned about their own moral superiority, because that is what he is concerned about in this situation. That is what he is obsessed with. Who is better out of me and you? It's not about us, okay? It's about animals on factory farms. Tell me, Mr. Sitwell, what do you think somebody would do if they were sincerely concerned about animal welfare? Would they be a vegan? Or would they write slop in the Telegraph in defence of factory farming? I would love to talk to this guy, William Sitwell. If you want to have a conversation about any of this with me, I would love to talk to you about it. Thus, all seems quiet from the vegan enclaves this week as they suffer from the brutal assault of a supermarket announcing not just better welfare standards, but a pledge that Taste the Difference pork will be net zero by 2029. Also announced is more investment in trials into the reduction of soya in feed and what Sainsbury's call a focus on more sustainable cereal feedstocks. Well, hey, that'd be nice if it was true. If that comes true, we'll see. At the moment, DEFRA have incorrect figures about the UK's self-sufficiency in pork because we fail to account for all the massive amount of soy that we import to feed to pigs and to chickens. But maybe Sainsbury's will get to net zero pork by 2029. Take that, says Sainsbury's, as it surreptitiously steals the vegans' bamboo shoes, eyeing indeed the full sustainable corn or apple-based wardrobe by adding these initiatives to its other pledges and source... Bloody hell, what a long sentence this is. William, you need to sort out your grammar, mate. By adding these initiatives to its other pledges, such as sourcing eggs from 100% free-range woodland roaming hens, improving chicken welfare and introducing a beef range with a lower carbon footprint. Okay, so... free range in the UK does not mean what we think it means. Free range means that the chickens technically have access to outside. For most chickens in practice, that means that there is technically a door in the huge barn that they're in with thousands of other chickens. But it's very unlikely that they're going to navigate their way through the thousands of other chickens to ever get outside during their lifetime. And at the moment, with bird flu, that is true. Chickens and eggs from chickens that are labelled free range, it's very likely that those chickens have never gone outside. Woodland roaming. I mean, you really think that Sainsbury's are going to get 100% of their eggs from chickens that roam woodlands? I'd love to know if you believe that, William Sitwell. As vegans themselves refuse to ban avocados from their diet, there's the avocados again, which that chap on GB News brought up. The mass-produced fruit is responsible for deforestation using the scarce water supplies detrimental to bees. They find themselves in the uncomfortable position of having to hear meat eaters claim that their food habits are less cruel and more environmentally protective than that of plant fetishists. Okay, well, here's the claim then. He is saying than vegans, assuming this is what he means by plant fetishists. They find themselves, they being vegans, in the uncomfortable position of having to hear meat eaters claim that their food habits are... Well, look, we've always had to hear meat eaters claim that. Meat eaters have always lied about this stuff. There's nothing here, zero whatsoever, in this article that you've written to suggest that meat-eating diets are less cruel or more environmentally protective than vegan diets. and in fact they're not. You are gesturing towards evidence which you imagine you've presented in support of it, but you have not. You have not written anything to suggest that a meat-eating diet is less cruel or more environmentally protective than a vegan diet, because it's not. Let's take a look at some actual evidence on this point. Vegans, vegetarians, fish eaters and meat eaters in the UK show discrepant environmental impacts. Study published in 2023 in Nature Food. These guys are a group from University of Oxford, looks like. So this is the global warming potential from different UK diets. You can see for vegans, we have CO2 equivalent kilograms per day, 2.47. And for medium meat eaters, 7.04. So for medium meat eaters in the UK, their environmental impact of their diet is about 3 times higher than the environmental impact of a vegan diet, and almost twice as high as the environmental impact of a vegetarian diet. This is an analysis published in Nature Food by a group from the University of Oxford. But that moral high ground is getting mighty crowded. Meanwhile, you'll find me happily floundering around at ground zero, staying afloat with my cliched principles of season and local. If it's crunchy, fresh and tasty, and I know where it comes from, that's good enough for me. I mean, how do you argue with that? This man's intuition. There's really nothing I could say to persuade this person. Perhaps I'll speak to them directly. Mr. Sitwell, you've not provided anything to suggest that a meat-eating diet is more ethical or more environmentally protective than a vegan diet. I'd love to speak to you about these issues. I'd love to speak to you about the welfare practices at Cranswick, the company that signed the new deal with Sainsbury's, about their environmental shortcomings that led them to having their factory farm in Norfolk refused permission. I don't expect that you will talk to me. Why would you? It's much more comfortable to just continue writing anti-vegan slop in the Telegraph and avoid any conversations that might give you an actual challenge. Hopefully lots of people share this with you. Cheers.